guys, Ninja Prav here again, and today we got Richard with us. Hi Richard, how are you today?
Hey buddy, how are you? Good to be back again.
Likewise mate, likewise. And we have a very special guest with us today. We have today Matt Smith joining us today. Matt, you want to give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. Firstly, thank you very much for the invite. So I'm Matt Smith. I'm a converged platform specialist within Dell Technologies. I'm part of the data center architecture team. I have a background in IT. I've been both in the application development space. In fact, that's actually where I started. Spent many years in IBM outsourcing. So I do understand the challenges of building large sets of infrastructure. And then many years as an enterprise architect, solution architect in Oracle back in the application space. So kind of blended IT background. Appreciate the opportunity. And I love the topic.
Well, we won't hold being a software developer against you. I think I think Pravesh and I identify as infrastructure guys.
Hey, I started as an application developer myself, so I got a bit of sympathy for Matt, so hey, leave him alone.
I never knew this at all. I'm feeling outrage here. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I got some hidden talents, mate.
I think that's for a different podcast, mate.
That's it. We'll do that sometime in the future.
You know the best thing about being an application developer?
Go.
It's never your fault.
Please.
It's always the infrastructure.
So it's always the hardware guy's fault.
and being in my previous life, I have been on both sides of the fence, and that is spot on. So you depends on which side of the fence you are, always pointing the finger in the other direction. So yeah, totally agree with it.
Well, this is interesting though, right? Because this is potentially, we were talking about what we're going to talk about today, and today we want to talk about why the business thinks IT sucks, and are we looking at part of a problem here? Is that traditionally there's been quite a divide between dev guys and infrastructure guys. Is that been part of the problem?
I guess interesting because it is, yes, definitely I would say, and that's why, which is something we touched on in our last week's conversation, or one of our previous videos conversation, is that's why people are bringing the methodologies like DevOps within their space, because they want to break those silos. And Matt, coming from your rich background that you have within IT, a number of years of experience, you would have seen something similar in your professional life. You want to share some of your experiences, please?
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting divide. And look, what I'd say is developers and business analysts tend to be closer to the business. They understand the business functionality. They're trying to develop new capability. So that makes a lot more sense to the business. That's fundamentally what they're looking for. Whereas it's actually interesting because the primary role of IT in large enterprises, so the CIO, and I remember having this conversation actually with the CIO of Defence, and he said to me, Matt, don't talk to me about any new capability or features while printers aren't working. Because at the end of the day, his responsibility is around stability and availability of the platforms. So you know what I mean? Like in enterprise IT, change is fundamentally evil because it's risk and potentially outages, and yet the business and developers want change. You want to release new functionality, new capability as frequently as you can.
Yep. Talking about the change, actually, you remind me something really, really interesting that I just came back to me. About 14 years back, I was working for, and that doesn't give my age away, I guess. I hope at least.
It makes you old, mate.
I was working for one of the medium-sized company, and they have this old compact box, and that was running their Oracle 7 drivers. And at the time, Oracle 7 was end of life. We did not have any drivers available. Even Oracle themselves did not have it. So we had to make sure that box is kept in a cotton wool. So we can't change anything. This is the way it's working. We cannot change it. So we just kept that box going for good, 5, 10, 12 years, just to make sure that, the change doesn't impact the current business model and the way business is running. So another example.
Yep. I think we've probably all got those kind of war stories, or something that has to keep going because people are scared to make a change to it.
Yes.
I guess ultimately what you're talking about there, right, is, man, this thing's working. Let's not do anything to it, because if it falls over, the potential impact to the business is significant, or could be quite significant.
And this is actually one of the things I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is understanding what that piece is in the greater jigsaw puzzle that is enterprise IT. It's very, very easy to bring in a new function or capability that's a discrete thing. And often the business underestimates the effort it actually takes in terms of that governance and control and integration and life cycle when it comes into core enterprise IT. And so when a CIO or the BAU team goes to flick something off, you have to do exactly that thinking. What's connected to this? What's working? What databases? What they have to think through all of that. Whereas when the business says, I want a new project, I want a new application, and the delivery team says, yes, we can get there in 6 months, and the business said, I've had enough of that. I'm not waiting. I'm swiping my credit card. I'm going to the cloud. I'm going to build things there because you guys are too slow. At some point in time, that still needs to be integrated. So parts of the data, security, governance, that still needs to be integrated. And then the complexity of that's significantly worse.
100%. I think you've touched on two things there that I reckon that we should have a chat about throughout the rest of this. The first one, I think, is that process sort of thing, and waterfall DevOps, or waterfall Agile, I should say, instead, not DevOps. But in particular, not necessarily the process, but the architectural changes that's happening in that application development space. And I guess predominantly there, I mean microservices. And that was the first thing. The second thing's gone already, because I think just microservices are the biggest thing I was thinking of. I'll come back to whatever the second thing was when I think about it. But Matt, I agree with you completely. I think the changes we're seeing there, and the I guess ultimately, as IT as a profession has matured over time, driven by some technology advances as well, we are getting better. I still don't think we're at the point where the business doesn't think that we suck, but we're getting better. Is that fair enough?
And I think we're definitely getting better, but sorry, Matt, just wanted to add one quick point is just wanted to defend it from a IT's point of view, and you're absolutely right. Like, the business has too much of it they've been waiting for too long for IT to deliver a given project. But coming in from a financial services background myself, where I was working in a fintech industry, looking after the IT within a financial services organization, what business needs to understand a lot of time, IT is definitely trying to deliver stuff, but they have to be confined within the silos of regulatory requirements. They have to follow the IT governance, and sometimes there is no way out of it. Yes, you will have to, and that's some point that you just touched upon briefly, I guess, was yes, those businesses swapping their credit card to buy the system and get it up and running in cloud. But when the governance time comes in, where you have to have your audits in place, you have to show all your checks and balances and make sure the system is secure and all that stuff, there's no way out of it. You have to still spend time to bring that system within your environment and integrate it in the right way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've just remembered my second point, and Ninja, you've just touched on it there perfectly, mate. It was really around, and I know, because we've talked about this on a previous vlog as well, mate, is that I think systems have gone from being built of best of breed to good enough. And that's a big change that's happened, driven by that cloud adoption, I think. So yeah, Matt, you were going to say something there, brother.
I agree. It is a dichotomy, right? There's two extreme ends of this. There's how do I build and maintain core IT assets and all of those things that represents, and how do I let the business have the agility? And public cloud is a good example of that kind of agility, where And we've seen it. We actually have seen the business taking budget from IT. So IT, to use your title, IT sucks so much. The business has actually said, I'm not handing my money over. I'm actually going to take it and I'm going to control it. I can stand up my own infrastructure. I can hire my own developers and I'm going to build stuff because I can't wait. So,
and we see that, right? Lines of business within organizations being given budget to drive IT. And that's a nightmare from a traditional IT and a traditional CIO point of view. So
it goes completely back to what Pravesh was saying: is how do I govern that? How do I make sure that I'm compliant with all of the
checks and balances?
Exactly. And then how do I integrate it? And how do I life cycle it? And how do I all of that back end is something that the business doesn't necessarily consider at the time. I just want my function. Give me my feature. I just want a banking app. I don't really care about how you're going to integrate it in with, RBAC administration and, security and retention and,
Spot on.
Don't care about that.
But does that come back to my first point that I made there? As an industry, now that we are developing new processes, but also those new technical architectures, I'll refer back to microarchitectures, microservices, sorry. I guess driven by the technology of containerization. Do you think that is enabling IT to get better at treading that line between being agile, meeting the demands of business in this very rapid modern world we live in, but also trying to make sure that it actually freaking works and doesn't fall over all the time?
It's an interesting one. My personal view is it's the latest in the line of enablers. Back when I was developing code 20 plus years ago, so I am showing my age.
You weren't writing code in COBOL, by the way.
I'm not going to admit what I was writing it in because I just get picked on.
They definitely
that would be a definite giveaway.
Let me grab my punch cards. But seriously, we toyed back then with user-centered design and agile methodology, and it didn't even exist back then. I actually came across some of the ideas being discussed because they were discussed for a long time before they were formalized at all. But what I loved about it was it really changed the focus. The pendulum swung from 100% internal IT and governance to swinging back towards the business and working out how can we deliver what they want. And literally it was sort of talking about, rather than writing waterfall fundamentally, rather than writing 3 months worth of paperwork with a business analysis and then getting a customer to sign off on those without necessarily understanding what they were, cost estimating it, going through a development cycle and delivering it and having the customer go, actually, no, that's just not what I want at all.
Don't you think this is part of IT sucks? Like, that is brilliant. Best of breed again. Like, we would sit down, we would do all this analysis. Like you said, your example there, 3 months of working all this stuff out. And then we hand it over to someone in the business and we expect them to understand that. I call bullshit on that. I'm just like, what? This has taken an IT professional 3 months to pull together, and now we expect someone in the business to sign off on that. And then when it doesn't actually meet their requirements, then we go, but you signed off on it. I mean, again, I think that is part of the problem. And that is where these new agile methods change that stuff, and that minimal viable product approach, where you're just trying to get something out the door, not necessarily the best, most polished, best of breed solution. Just get it out the door, minimal viable. Oh, it's not quite right. That's cool. Iterate. And Matt, I think that's the big change that sort of changes that interaction between IT and the business.
Absolutely, completely agree. And I think coming back to your earlier comment is where does microservices and that architecture fit in that? For me, that's an evolution. That's another step. What I particularly like about it is the fact that we're breaking down a granularity at a level where you can apply governance at a much lower standard. We can make it much easier for a developer to build a discrete function. and then still comply with all of the rules, and then continuous test is going on so that you can refresh it and you can update it and you can deprecate it. You're building a framework, a process, a methodology framework for the organization to try and have that governance control plus agility. So I think that whole thing, and it's been interesting because way back in the day, so 10 plus years ago, I mean, that was kind of what Rational, part of IBM software, was kind of heading towards, and we've seen the dramatically different evolution of it with Pivotal. I mean, wow, just massive steps forward, and that's really what it's about. How do we blend structure, control, and governance, and still give agility?
Yeah. And a good point that you touched upon, Matt, is I've seen examples of where a process was developed, a system was developed, and by the time it is the time to take a feedback from the end user or the actual business person, it's too late. We're too late into the cycle. So this new agile way of developing, you have that intercept right early in the process where you can still make that decision, you can still make that course correction, so to speak, and to get the product, targeted towards what you're trying to achieve, rather than something that a developer is just kind of interpreting it from reading the requirements.
And change it, and lifecycle it, and evolve it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And bits at a time as well, Matt. Like what you were saying, I think one of the things that I really like around this is that I think from once virtualization of servers became the norm, I'll call it that, within industry, then the next thing was, and maybe even before sort of cloud came and became a bit more the norm, was this dream. I'll still call it the dream of moving workloads from A to B, and all of a sudden we thought because something was virtualized, you could move a virtual server from A to B. Okay, off from your on-prem solution to a public cloud. Use that as an example, which sounds fantastic, and the technical capability of doing that has existed for a while. And then you start looking at the reality of it, and like, well, actually, I don't just need to move that server, because that server is actually just one piece of a jigsaw puzzle that actually delivers a service to the business, and just moving that one thing doesn't really achieve diddly squat. And now to move the entire service actually becomes maybe not technically infeasible, but certainly a lot more high risk. Now in that sort of containerized microservices world, this is one of the things that I think is really awesome. Web 2.0, or whatever label you want to put on it, that ability to be able to run, I'll call it chunks of the application at different physical locations. Maybe some of that's happening in public cloud and some of it's happening on-prem. Who cares? The right thing happens in the right place. I think that is really cool.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and with the evolution of all these on-premises, now you can actually have a cloud-like experience within your own data center. So like, VMware using VCF, or Microsoft with the Azure Stack HCI.
Or Power One. Like if we've got Matt here and we don't mention Power One at least sort of once, then,
I don't want to end up with a black eye. So
never going to come back, right? But okay, but in all seriousness, no, that is exactly the sort of thing that Power One is enabling, right? Is that product of ours, right? It's a Dell product I'm talking about, for those people that don't understand, that are watching this and going, what is this Power One he's talking about? The whole concept behind that is the automation and simplification of an on-premises workload deployment solution. Matt, is that a fair enough way to... I haven't butchered Power One too much there.
No, it's a really, really good way of describing it. I mean, fundamentally, the last 2 years of R&D was all about how do I take three-tier architecture and make it behave in an agile manner like public cloud, or better. And so that's exactly what the entire focus has been. It's really as simple as that. I mean, it's as complex as that, and it's as simple as that.
It is just as simple as that. So now, actually, it makes me think about something as well. So we've spoken about these new methodologies and agile and everything. And part of the key behind Power One there, which is what made me think about this, is that Power One controller and the sort of AI going into making something very complex very simple. So not Power One, but just AI, machine learning, deep learning in general. And I get this is massive hypothetical, and I don't think any of us are super experts in this. But we're getting good now. We're getting better now at designing applications so that the business doesn't think we suck as much. And we've talked about, microservices, process changes, rada. Now what I think, what I see happening more, particularly as customers are getting their head around this massive explosion of data, they're starting to try and get their head around how they take advantage of, I'll just say AI in general, to wrap up all of those different types of AI. Do we think those same methodologies are going to work in that new AI world? Or are we just going to be sort of back at square one and the business is going to think we suck again and we're going to need to come up with something new? Or, yeah, I get this is hypothetical. I'm just sort of interested in your ideas, your opinions.
Oh, I'm looking to the ninja.
Yeah, there was a lot of silence there. We're going to have to edit that out.
Yeah, we'll do that. I was waiting for you, Matt. So I thought.
I get it. Maybe the questions are relevant, and maybe I've taken us down a path.
Look, at the end of the day, it's actually an interesting one because AI/ML is fundamentally next kind of generation of application development, data-intensive workloads, data analytics, and so on. Right? I mean, it's fundamentally what it's doing. Right? It's crunching down massive data sets, building some sort of rule base, and then being able to apply it out. How will that impact infrastructure? Well, it's massive data sets. It's massive compute horsepower.
Huge.
You need to be able to spin it up. You need to be able to use it, ingest it, throw it away.
Exactly.
But also process, privacy, security on those data sets. Because now those data sets aren't just, the data set isn't just a SQL database that the business has. Now, typically those data sets really involve a lot of customer data, and therefore there should be, I might suggest at the moment there isn't, more thought given to privacy and with that security.
Let me give you a couple of interesting examples. I'd put this forward. I'd put an argument forward that the Tesla car, the battery, not that interesting. You know what makes it really interesting? The data set that they've captured to make it self-driving.
Correct.
They have captured millions of miles and millions of hours of drivers driving, and they analyze that to build a self-driving model. That's the thing.
Spot on.
Google, I don't know if you've noticed, just recently they pinged us and said, hey, we want to use your voice. We want access to your voice to be able to do some analytics on it. The whole reason they gave away emails, they're doing analytics on it. So, yeah, it's incredibly valuable, that data, and should be a lot more secure.
100%, yeah.
And like they say, data is the new oil or new black gold that they talk about. So spot on. If you having that pot of gold sitting within your data center on your infrastructure, you have to apply that the security model and then the governance on top of it to ensure it's safe from prying eyes.
Yeah. And again, unfortunately, I think, again, I don't think we're very good at that. Go, Matt.
I was just saying, again, we're coming back to that dichotomy. We've got governance and control, which is your traditional CIO role, versus the business saying, oh, we can pull revenue in, because that's the challenge, right? And so we're back to that same old chestnut.
What, businesses are in business to make money? Unheard of.
The business does two things. It can optimize and do something efficiently and save money, or it can actually drive new business ventures and create money. That's all they do. They either be efficient and save or generate. That's it. That's what they do. So
then, carry on, brother.
IT CIO is typically seen as be more efficient, save money, don't crash and have an outage. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got give me the latest AI, ML, analytics, database, marketing machine, end user applications, and so on.
So that was the other little rabbit hole I was about to take us down there when I cut you off. CIO versus CTO. And I know that there are all sorts of other new chief digital officers and all of this kind of crap. CIOs and CTOs. I think there always has been a fundamental difference between the two of them. I don't think many people have really understood it, but I think more and more now, CIO, Matt, as you sort of said, I will simplify and say, keep the lights on, reduce costs, reduce IT spend.
Yep.
CTO, come up with the next awesome technology thing that's going to help generate revenue for the business. Is that go argument?
I'm with you. CTO is the chaos engine. If your CIO is stability, then your CTO needs to be the opposite. And by far the best ones I've ever seen are incredibly forward thinking. They're more business aligned. They want change. They're you've got to balance that. You've got to balance that reality with the CIO for the best possible outcome.
Yes.
But yeah, you've got to have that tension. Otherwise, it doesn't work. They've got to.
I like
you
that
have
word
to have
tension.
I should call it as internal competition, a healthy competition, because that's what creates your innovations. That fuels it. And a good CIO, in my opinion, would be the one that would be like keeping a step ahead of its competition and forward thinking, like Matt said, and bringing in those changes early enough so the business can make use of those for their benefit, for their advantage, rather than always playing that 8-ball catch-up game.
And I agree with you, Pravesh.
Yeah,
some can play that dual role, but man, it's hard to be tactical and strategic at the same time.
Correct.
And to
I agree.
be fair, I think some of those CIOs, from a business point of view, don't have that ability. A CIO that reports into a CFO, no, their job is, again, I'll pivot back to reduce cost, because a CFO will think like that. I think a CIO that gets to report into a CEO is probably in a better position to be more strategic.
Yep. And then the other thing I've also noticed in a lot of large organizations, especially the ones that have been successful within an IT transformation journey, is I've noticed that their CIOs are usually either directly reporting into the CEO or at least be a part of their, the at least got a chair on the board where they can talk about and present the IT's point of view in front of the company's leadership, rather than getting a second-hand information, placed in front of them.
Agreed. I think the other key thing that they've got to be able to do is they've got to restructure for change. Most of them don't want to do that. But change is risk, right? I used to do N-1 patching in large environments. So you carry your pager, you roll a change in, you hope it's going to work, you roll that back out again.
That brings back memories.
Yeah, right. And so every change you make, you risk the environment. Every time a carbon-based life form touches a keyboard in your environment, it's a risk. Fundamentally, what we used to do was try and lock down enterprise IT and minimize it. We've still got outage windows and change windows and those kinds of things. The fundamental difference when we move more towards a cloud or the microservices architecture, we start talking about, I'm releasing application functionality multiple times a day. You go talk to our pivotal brethren about an environment, and they're appalled. The idea of an environment, an application environment that would be living longer than a few days is strange. Why would you want that?
Yep.
We create and destroy them continuously. There's huge benefits to that. It's 100% automated, no carbon mistakes being made. And if I can repeat that continuously, then that change process actually becomes solid. So it's a different approach. They have to adapt and create processes and ways of doing things in a more agile manner. I want to go back to something you raised earlier, because this has been playing in the back of my mind. Which, remember you talked about the advent of virtualization. Australia was a huge early adopter. When I started, customers fundamentally had a mainframe, or they had a couple of mid-range boxes. And I remember the explosion of x86, and it was chaos. It was really hard. It was great initially, but then once customers started to get 50 or 100 or 200 or 300 servers, just trying to maintain and patch them was a nightmare.
That virtual service brawl.
And then we added virtualization, and everyone was like, yay, we've got portability. This is really great. But guess what? We had this massive virtualization sprawl before we actually had a governance point because we ran out of data center space. We added virtualization in, all of a sudden we, order of magnitude increased the number of things we were trying to patch and manage manually. Didn't work. Didn't work.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Sorry, I was about to share a very good story on that point because I remember the time when we were just going through the process of virtualization, the physical service P2V process. And at the time, the company I was working in, they had a policy of making sure we know the environment exactly the way it is at this moment of time. Once we start virtualizing the server, there was no way we can know if the virtual machine has been vMotion from one host to the other. So literally there was a person sitting in with a spreadsheet every morning going through and updating it. And, not to say that that process didn't live for long because, it was too tedious and, they knew it's time consuming. So,
Exactly. And the other one that sort of came out of that time was customers who had an environment that really wasn't patched or maintained or up to date. All of a sudden, when virtualization came along, did that fix the problem? Did it magically resolve things? No, it made it significantly worse.
No.
Correct.
Yeah, because they had more.
Yeah.
And now, carry on, mate, carry on.
And cloud, right? I mean, we saw that massive swing towards cloud where everybody went, great, I've got a mess of IT on-prem. I'm going to fix that by going to the cloud. Well, no. If you take a mess and you move it from this set of CPUs and storage to that set of CPUs, you still have a mess. It's just now more of an uncontrolled and expensive mess. Making that change and very deliberately setting up your architecture and your processes and your methodology to move towards next generation. So I'm going to build systems and processes and organizational structure that's about being able to embrace and adopt this next generation. And as you said, Microsoft's architecture is a really interesting way of thinking about that. We're changing to adopt this because the governance and control shifts down a couple of notches, and we can allow greater flexibility and agility and still keep structure, governance, and control.
Yep. But the precursor, in my opinion, to that would be you have to fix the two ways to achieve that architecture is either draw a line in the sand and say this is it. Today onwards, these are two separate infrastructures. They're running one in the new methodologies, and we still have to maintain the existing infrastructure to keep the lights on the existing environment. Or the other way is actually do the right way, which is, and obviously that will be a lot more time consuming and a lot more effort oriented, where you can implement the policies and procedures in place to do the things in the right way to begin with within your current environment, and then start moving to the new ways of microarchitectures or cloud computing. Would you agree with that approach?
My friend, it sounds like you're talking DevOps, which is exactly what it was. I'm going to take
and that's
some
exactly
of my
what we talked about last time.
Best and brightest folks, and rather than having them in silos with a change control methodology that we pass through queues, I'm going to put them all together in a team, and fundamentally what they're going to try and achieve is a set of vertical automation right through the stack so that developers can create things with no human intervention, building out those environments that are required for the application stack. That's exactly it. So the rest of the core IT is still ticking on the same way it is, and SAP is still being run the same way, and so on. But any of the new generation applications that need the agility, which are raising the revenue, these are the new functionality that's the business wants because fundamentally it's generating revenue. We let those go and be agile. Yeah, can you run those two tiers in the environment? My personal opinion, hell yes, we can. Yep.
It'll be hard. It'll be more expensive to do it that way. But if I guess you can't cut the cord to the, to the your history, what you have been running for 10, 12 years. There's no other way.
Yes, that's it. As a migration strategy, I think you almost have to do that. Now, whether you choose to continue to run like that, or whether it's a stepping stone to an eventual end state that you want to be in. Okay, so that's a decision that businesses will need to make. I think whilst all this automation and no carbon life form intervention stuff is beautiful, I think the other thing that we need to learn as well is that it is now very easy to completely root an entire environment, if I put it that way. And I think there was a great example, and luckily this wasn't business affecting, and I've used this before, both in Twitter and other things that I've spoken about. Anthony at Veeam, great guy based here in Australia, very active, and luckily
Really good.
he was good enough, I think, to write this article on how he had just messed up something as simple as he was provisioning a whole bunch of infrastructure in AWS. Like I said, not production, it's just some test stuff for him. And he accidentally, if I remember rightly, he published his AWS private key on GitHub.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh,
The incredible thing was it shows the power of automation. And two, that's why I love the story, and I do appreciate him publishing this and putting this out there, is it showed two things. One, it showed how easy it is to mess something up in that automation, but also it really showed the power of automation, because literally within minutes, some external bot had grabbed that key, was spooling up, I forget the number, like thousands of virtual machines using Anthony's account. Now, AWS sorted them out and it was all backtracked and yada, yada, yada. But the story that he put out there, I think, was beautiful, because it demonstrated how easy it is to do that stuff, both for good and for evil. If you have a bad actor, then, man, they can cause a lot of damage real fast. And some of that damage can have significant financial impact, not just business reputation and that kind of stuff. I just mean, if that stuff's running in public cloud, you're paying for that, man. So
yep.
yeah,
Spot on. Oh, that was some good information. Good chatting here, guys. Good discussion. Richard, thank you so much for coming in today and making part of this lovely conversation again this week. And Matt, very
Pleasure
special
as
thank you
always.
to you, mate. Very special thank you. Thanks for coming in, and we hope to see you again next time in our future videos.
Thanks for having me. Great conversation.
Likewise.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you everyone for viewing today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you are viewing this for the first time, I would encourage you to please subscribe to our channel, and please spread the word around so a lot more people know about this initiative that Richard, myself, and Matt have taken over today. And for that, we'll thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.
See you later.